Hey guys, YouTuber 100 here. Alright, and yeah, it's been a little while once again since I have made a video. It's been like 12 days since I have made a video. Yeah, it's just because, like I told you guys in my last video, I've like gotten a new job now, and just it's been like kind of like time consuming because yeah, I've just like really been working a lot for like the ever since my last video. Like I've just been like working constantly, and like when I get at home, I'm just like really tired. So I just really haven't been really like up to really making any videos just because I get like really tired when I get home. But yeah, I finally am here to make another video, and yeah, and for this video, I figured like since it is still July, I figured that rather than wait until like when SummerSlam is coming up, I figured I would do a Bash at the Beach review, like while it's still July, because yeah, WCW did have the Bash at the Beach events in July and not August. So yeah, so I decided that this year I would do the Bash at the Beach review in July. So yeah, and so this is gonna be a review for Bash at the Beach 1997. Yeah, so overall, this was a pretty good show. This was really just like, this was like the 1 year anniversary of the formation of the NWO, and yeah, and this was still like just when WCW was still just like, really just like on top of the world. Like this was still like at the time when they were still reigning in good over the WWF. And this pay per view really is just like another example of it. I mean, yeah, this was just like a really good show overall. I mean, there really was not anything bad on the show at all. There wasn't really anything like, well, I shouldn't really say anything, but yeah, there wasn't really a whole lot that was like absolutely like great about this show. But yeah, there were still like a couple of like really good to great matches on the show, and even like the rest of the show overall, it really wasn't that bad. I mean, there were some matches that were just like kind of like okay, but there really wasn't like anything that was like truly bad on the show. Like you had two matches in particular that were really good to great, and you had like some other like matches that were overall pretty good, and yeah, and even just like the worst of the show gets is really just matches that are just like decent to okay, but yeah, still it is overall like a very very good show, and yeah, and it doesn't really have like anything bad on it at all. So yeah, so this is really just like another example of just like how dominant the WCW was at this time over the WWF, because yeah, this was still like during like the 84 week reign of WCW had over the WWF. And yeah, and this pay per view was just like another example of this. Like this was just like a really really good to maybe even a great show. So yeah, so I just really don't know how else I can really put it. I mean, it really was like a very good event, and yeah, it was definitely very enjoyable to watch. So yeah, so let me just talk about the card for the show. All right, so yeah, so the first match on the show was Mortis and Wrath versus Glacier and Ernest Miller, and yeah, overall this was an all right match. Yeah, I mean it was a decent match. I mean there really wasn't anything like uh, to anything that really did like a stand out about it, but yeah, it was still like a pretty decent match. I mean, it was like just back and forth between the two teams. Like I said, not really anything like too memorable about it, but it wasn't a boring match. It was still decent enough of to really like not really like make you like totally bored. Yeah, it just went back and forth between both teams, and then you had James Vandenberg at ringside with Mortis and Wrath, and he was definitely the difference maker in the match, because at the end of the match, as a Glacier like was had a cover on Mortis. Mortis like uh, James Vandenberg put Mortis's foot on the rope, and then he like wrapped a chain around Mortis's foot, and then as the referee was distracted, then Mortis then uh, hit Glacier with the chronic kick with the chain on his foot. So yeah, that like ended up knocking out Glacier, and then that allowed Mortis to pin Glacier, and so yeah, Mortis and Wrath got the win. So yeah, so overall, it was a decent match. Like I said, nothing like too memorable about it, but it was still a decent match. So I would probably give that around like a 2.5 stars. Yeah. And then next up, then we had like the true show stealer. Next up was the WCW Cruiserweight Championship on the line. It was Chris Jericho defending against Ultimo Dragon. No, gosh, it's still sometimes I just find it like truly like just hard to believe that Chris Jericho was actually like considered a cruiserweight in the WCW, and he never was in the WWE. Yeah, just and yeah, this was just like such a great match right here. I mean, this is just like another example of just like how great the cruiserweight division really was. I mean, this was just like such an awesome match here. Yeah, just yeah, I did like how like kind of early on in the match how both Chris Jericho and Ultimo Dragon like attempted to do the same move simultaneously, like they did like a drop kick at the same time and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah, and this match just like it had everything that the cruiserweights really did. Like there were high flying spots, there were like a lot of like aerial attacks. There was like a lot of high flying spots. There was stuff on the outside. Yeah, I mean it just like pretty much had just everything that you would expect to see from the cruiserweights. And yeah, and this just was just another example of just how great the cruiserweight division in the WCW really was. Yeah, yeah, and then and yeah, and it would just like went back and forth, and yeah, you had like just like I said, high flying spots, acrobatic spots, a lot of counters in it. Yeah, just yeah, such an entertaining match. And then yeah, and then it ended with like a Ultimo Dragon like attempted a Hurricane Run on Chris Jericho, but Chris Jericho was able to counter into a roll up, and then Chris Jericho was able to pin Ultimo Dragon and get the win. So Chris Jericho retained the Cruiserweight Championship. So yeah, so this was like just such a great match, and another example of just like how great the Cruiserweight division really was, as I have been saying. So yeah, so so this match really doesn't really get talked about out amongst like cruiserweight matches in WCW, but yeah, this was once again just like a real great one. So if you haven't seen this before, and if you really do love the cruiserweight division, check this match out because yeah, this was just such a great match. So yeah, so overall, I would probably give that a solid 4 stars. Yeah, just a great match right there. Yeah. Then next up, then we had the Steiner brothers versus Masahiro, Chono, and Great Muta. And yeah, this was once again, yeah, this was a really good match too. I mean, yeah, the Steiner brothers really did like like really did like have a lot of like great matches. I mean, yeah, the Steiner brothers really are one of the greatest tag teams of all time. Even though, like I've said before, how just I really do hate Scott Steiner. As a singles competitor, I really did like hate Scott Steiner. But yeah, I will say that like when he and Rick were a tag team, he did do really good. And yeah, and this match is just another example of that. I mean, yeah, this is probably like the Steiner brothers' best match in their 96 to 98 run in the WCW. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, this was just like such a really entertaining match. I mean, just like the other one, like this match really did we really did go back and forth between both teams, and yeah, and there was like great teamwork from both teams in the match, and yeah, and the Steiner brothers really just were being themselves. Like they did like their like trademark pose and everything. Just yeah, something that I want to talk about with the Steiner brothers. Like during this time, like this was the time where like Scott Steiner, like he went from like the mullet to just like he like cut his hair, so he just like a normal short hair do. Yeah, and just I always kind of, and this was also like during the time like he like had a goatee as well. He just had like the black goatee, and yeah. what I find interesting, like, is that the Steiner brothers, like, when with Scott Steiner having the look that he did at this time, like, it really did kind of like them kind of look like twins, because they really did look very similar with like Scott Steiner having like the short dark hair and the dark goatee. Yeah, they did look lot more similar than they did like with like Scott Steiner's other looks, like when he did just have like the mullet and no facial hair, and of course like with the white hair. So yeah, so they really did look like really identical during this time. Well, not really identical, but they did look a lot more similar. Yeah, yeah, and this, like I said, well, really good match. Some good back and forth action between both teams, and yeah, there were like some double team moves in the match from both teams. And it did have a nice ending with with Scott Steiner hitting a Frankensteiner on Muta, and then Rick Steiner hitting a top rope DDT, and then that allowed the Steiner brothers to get the win. So yeah, so the Steiner brothers ended up winning the match. So a really good match right here. I would give this 3.5 stars. Yeah, and then next up, then we had a 6-man tag match. It was Juventud Guerrera, Héctor Garza, and Lizmark Jr. versus La Parka, Psychosis, and Villano the Fourth. I think that's his name. Yeah, and overall, this is a good, I guess. I mean, there really wasn't anything like too memorable about this match. I really don't really remember a whole lot from this match. Yeah, it was just kind of like it was just kind of like just a brawl with a bunch of like high flying moves and just a really big spot fest. So it really just was like all 6 guys just like getting in their high spots and yeah, just like doing their thing in the ring, and yeah, and it was good. It wasn't a bad match, but yeah, it just really wasn't like anything that memorable about it. It was just kind of like all 6 guys just doing their thing in there and just like getting in all their big spots. So I really can't really talk too much about this match because there really isn't a whole lot to talk about. But yeah, in the end, Juventud, Hector, and Lizmark ended up getting the win. So yeah, so it was a good match. I would give that probably like 3 stars. Then next up, then we got another gem on the show. It was uh, Chris Benoit versus Kevin Sullivan in a career match, as they referred to it. And basically, yeah, it was basically a retirement match. Just, yeah, the loser would end up retiring. Yeah. And in this match, like, you also did have a Jacqueline and a Jimmy Hart at ringside with Kevin Sullivan. Yeah. And just like right at the start of the match, like they were fighting like outside the ring in the entranceway, and then yeah, Jacqueline also like was getting involved, like also helping Kevin Sullivan attack Chris Benoit. Yeah, and yeah, and they ended up like fighting up like on the stage set, like just like in the whole beach set, that like knocking down like the surfboards and the beach house and all that stuff. And like I said, you did have like Jacqueline also like attacking Chris Benoit as well, and Chris Benoit had to like fight her off too. Yeah, and then it eventually ended up getting to the ring, and yeah, and this was just like a really really good to great match as well. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, you just had like both guys just like going back and forth, and yeah, you did like just have a bunch of like awesome spots in the match. Yeah, and you also had like Jimmy Hart getting involved in the match. Yeah, this was like a no disqualification match. So yeah, so there was interference by both Jacqueline and Jimmy Hart in the match. Yeah, yeah, and then at one point, Kevin Sullivan was actually biting Chris Benoit, and then Chris Benoit bit back in retaliation. Yeah, and Kevin Sullivan was able to like fight out of the crossface a couple of times. Yeah, and then. And yeah, then it just kind of like went back and forth, and then towards the end of the match, as like Chris Benoit was like dangling upside down from the ropes. Yeah, he was like hanging upside down and from in the corner of the ring. Yeah, and like he like tried to have Jacqueline bring in like a wooden chair here, and then yeah, but Kevin Sullivan like wanted to hit Chris Benoit with the chair, so he was just kind of like just fighting with Jacqueline over the chair, and then finally Jacqueline then just nailed Kevin Sullivan with the chair, and then Chris Benoit was then able to hit the flying headbutt, and then Chris Benoit was able to pin Kevin Sullivan and get the win. So yeah, so Chris Benoit won, and Kevin Sullivan was the one forced into retirement. So yeah, this was like a really, really good to great match right here. It wasn't quite as good as the Jericho Ultimo Dragon match, but yeah, it was still a really good to great match. So I would give that 3 3/4. Yeah. And then next up, then you had the United States Championship on the line. It was Jeff Jarrett defending against Steve McMichael, and you had Queen Deborah McMichael in Steve McMichael's corner. Yeah. And yeah, this match only lasted like about like 7 minutes, and yeah, so not really anything memorable really happened in this match. I mean, this match was okay, but yeah, really not really anything memorable about it, and it was it was obvious, and it was short too, so not really a whole lot to talk about. But yeah, it did like have another swerve where as the referee was like distracted, Deborah tossed the metal briefcase over to Jeff Jarrett, and then as the referee was distracted, Jeff Jarrett nailed Steve McMichael with the briefcase, and then that allowed Jeff Jarrett to get the win. And then this was the swerve with Deborah joining Jeff Jarrett. So yeah, so you had like another swerve like that, and yeah, then of course like this would like eventually like this didn't really carry over, but yeah, of course like this later on, of course. When Jeff Jarrett went back to the WWF, Deborah also eventually did join up with Jeff Jarrett there too. So interesting to see her do it in WCW and then in the WWF. Yeah. So that was kind of like interesting to see. Yeah. But yeah, this match, yeah, it was all right. But yeah, like it's just like really, really short. So I would give this probably only like about 2 stars. Yeah. Then next up, then we had a tag team match again. Yeah, this match, it was Scott Hall and the Macho Man Randy Savage taking on Diamond Dallas Page and a mystery partner who wasn't revealed until this match. And so yeah, nobody knew who Diamond Dallas Page's partner rather was going to be in the match. But then it was revealed during his entrance that his mystery partner ended up being Curt Hennig, aka Mr. Perfect, and yeah, this was his WCW debut. Yeah. So as far as this match goes, I mean, this match this was okay, but yeah, given like who you did have in the match, this was probably a match that you would expect to be a lot better, to be honest. I mean, as is, the match was still solid, but yeah, it wasn't really like the match that I really think it could have been. Yeah. So for this match, it was basically like the same style as the other tag matches, where it went back and forth, but not really anything too memorable happened in the match. But yeah, you just kind of like had like a DDP really just like facing off against both Scott Hall and Macho Man, and then Curt Hennig ended up like getting involved in it too. Yeah, I did like how at one point as Scott Hall and Curt Hennig were like facing off, like Scott Hall of course like threw like his toothpick in Curt Hennig's face, but Curt Hennig retaliated by spitting his gum right into Scott Hall's face. Yeah, and then towards the end of the match, like as Curt Hennig was kind of like well, not really Curt Hennig, but like as DDP was kind of like laying on like the ring apron, or like just like kind of like hurt and just like holding onto the ropes, as like Curt Hennig was like being thrown towards the ropes, like Irish whip to the ropes. DDP was accidentally held them down, and it caused Curt Hennig to like fall to the outside of the ring and hit his head on the ring apron. Yeah, and then as like DDP like ended up being like inadvertently tagged in after that, then and like as a DDP got in, as Curt Hennig got back up, then he just like hit DDP in the back of the head, and then he just ended up like leaving, so he ended up like turning on a DDP right here, and then this allowed Scott Hall to hit the Outsider's Edge, as it was called in WCW, to DDP, and then Randy Savage hit the flying elbow drop, and then that allowed the two of them to get the pin, and they ended up winning the match. Yeah, and then this would like, of course, like lead to Curt Hennig and joining the NWO. Yeah, so this match overall, like I said, it was decent, but you figured like it could have been better. So yeah, so I would like probably give that match just about like 2 3/4. Then next up was quite a surprise. Then next up we had Ric Flair versus Roddy Piper, and this match was surprisingly pretty good. I mean, yeah, I mean because yeah, Roddy Piper really wasn't having like a whole lot of good matches during this time. Like a lot of Roddy Piper's matches happening during this time, like they were pretty bad. Like he had like the matches with Hulk Hogan at both Starrcade 1996 and Halloween Havoc 1997, and those matches really were not that great. And pretty much like just when you look at like the matches Roddy Piper had in WCW during this time, yeah, I mean you really are not really gonna find a whole lot of good matches throughout like just his entire run in WCW. So yeah, so Roddy Piper really wasn't having like a whole lot of good matches during this time, but this match surprisingly was pretty good. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it really was like a pretty good back and forth match, and yeah, and I did think like we can definitely say that this definitely surpassed a lot of people's expectations. Yeah, yeah. In this match, like you really did have like a lot of good spots in the match. It really did go back and forth. I think Roddy Piper ended up like countering the figure four at one point in the match, and yeah, and just yeah, Ric Flair really was able to really um pull out like a really good performance when he was in the right situation at this time. I mean, yeah, and this match really just to show it. I mean, Roddy Piper and Ric Flair, like despite their ages at this time, they really were able to really like bring out the best in each other. This was just like a really really good back and forth match, and like I said, this is definitely like the probably the best match of like Roddy Piper's later years. Yeah, but yeah, the only problem I really do have with the match is the ending, because in the end, like a Roddy Piper like did get the win over Ric Flair, but I just really hated the way that he did win. Like rather than Ric Flair just like submitting, they just like had to be like Ric Flair ended up like passing out. They like it just was like the whole thing where like like the referee raised Ric Flair's arms, and then yeah, it dropped 3 times. So yeah, so it was like just the knockout win. Yeah, and yeah, I don't really know how other people really feel about it, but I just really hate this shit. I just really freaking hate that they WCW constantly did this. Like in a lot of Roddy Piper's matches at this time, this was like how he won a lot of them, just like by knocking his opponent out. Like in those 2 Hulk Hogan matches that I was just talking about, like they had Roddy Piper win those matches that way with him just like knocking Hulk Hogan out, and they did it again here. Just seriously, WCW just really did overdo it with like the knockout submission holds, while knocking people out with submission holds. Like the WWE really hardly ever does that. Like that has happened before, but they don't really like. It really is rare that a match really ends that way. But WCW just like was doing it constantly, and really just this seems to be like one of the problems that WCW really had. Just they really didn't end matches very well. Like I've noticed that throughout like a lot of WCW events that I have seen, and even like ones that I've talked about, like you may notice that like in the WCW events I've talked about, like a lot of like there are certain matches on here that really don't like end very well. Like I was talking to him before about like when I reviewed Great American Bash 1990, how just I didn't like how Sting beat Ric Flair by just like countering the figure four into like a small package or an inside cradle. Yeah. And also, like, when I reviewed Greed, you'd have Scott Steiner won by, like, knocking DDP out, and the same thing happened at Starrcade 2000. Just, yeah, I've noticed this, like, happening a lot, and just, I freaking hate this. It's just like WCW really just cannot do like a straight up finish and have it be done in a good way. Like I've said before when I was talking about the Great American Bash 1990, it would have been a lot better if Sting like countered the figure four and reversed it and turned it into a Scorpion Deathlock and got Ric Flair to submit there. And they couldn't have just like had Roddy Piper actually like submit these guys or just like straight up pin them. Like he really always had to constantly win by knocking people out like this, and just WCW had to like do these kinds of like technical submissions excessively like this. So yeah, that's something that I really do like hate about the match, and what I really didn't like about WCW in general, that they really just did not really end matches very well. So yeah, so well that really is does like kind of like affect the match for me. Like that is something that kind of like does bring it down because I just did not like the finish, and I just it really pisses me off that they don't end matches good like that. Yeah. So yeah, but overall it was a good match. But due to like that awful finish, yes, that does kind of like knock the score down a little bit for this match. So yeah, so I would give that match like 3 stars. Like if they would have like had like just a straightforward win, like with like if Ric Flair actually submitted a Roddy Piper pinned him, then I could have rated this match higher. But yeah, due to the dumb finish like that, I'm giving this match 3 stars. Yeah. All right. And then we got the main event. It was Lex Luger and the Giant versus Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman. Yeah, so yeah, Dennis Rodman. I mean, yeah, you remember this, like Dennis Rodman in the WCW, like part of the NWO and all that. Yeah, so this was like a. I'm sure a lot of people really were not expecting a whole lot from this match, given that you had Dennis Rodman in there, and like seeing as how like when like like celebrities like this, whether it is like actors or athletes from other sports, yeah, people really don't expect a whole lot. Yeah, but this was actually a pretty decent match right here. I mean, it was okay. I mean, not really anything like too spectacular about it, but once again, it was okay. Yeah, I think Dennis Rodman did what pretty well for a non wrestler in the match. I mean, yeah, he pretty much like was like impressive, just like how Mr. T was, and how even like Lawrence Taylor and when he faced Big Man Bigelow at WrestleMania 11. Yeah, Dennis Rodman did like fine in the match. I mean, he did well for a non wrestler, I guess. Yeah, and and it was pretty much like in the style where like Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman, like they were like do like doing a lot of double teaming in the match, and like whenever Lex Luger and Giant got the upper hand, like they would like regroup on the outside of the ring, and you also had like a Macho Man out at ringside with Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman. Yeah, and the match did just kind of go back and forth. Like I said, whenever like Luger and Giant went on offense, like Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman, like they would like get to the outside of the ring and just like regroup. And yeah, they did like a lot of double team moves in the match. Dennis Rodman, like he did pretty well in the match and stuff. And yeah, and Hulk Hogan like was like just getting in like his cheap shots throughout the match, and then Lex Luger and the Giant, like they were like a battling back on them, and then at one point, then as like the Giant was like in the upper hand on Hulk Hogan, then Sting ended up like walking out, and as the Giant was setting up to chokeslam Hulk Hogan, Sting just like nailed the Giant with his bat, and then Sting just left. So yeah, this was still like during the time where like they were still like building up towards like Hulk Hogan and Sting at Starrcade later that year. Yeah, they like built that thing up for well over a year, and it was continuing here. And you really were not sure like who Sting was really with, because yeah, this was still like during the time where Sting was like considering himself a free agent and just like being very mysterious at the time. Yeah, so Sting like hit the Giant with the baseball bat, and that like took him out of commission. And then as a Hulk Hogan and Dennis Rodman were like trying to double team Lex Luger, battled back, and then Hulk Hogan accidentally hit Dennis Rodman, and then Lex Luger got Hulk Hogan up in the torture rack, and then Hulk Hogan then eventually submitted. So yeah, so Lex Luger and the Giant ended up winning. So yeah, so this overall it was a decent match, and yeah, like I said, Dennis Rodman did pretty well for a non-wrestler, and but yeah, and even then, like even if you really don't think the match is really all that good, it definitely was a lot better than what they did the following year, going up against wasn't it like DDP and Karl Malone. So yeah, at least this match does have the distinction that it was at least better than that match. So yeah, so overall a pretty decent match. I would probably give it around like a 2.5 stars. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess also like Lex Luger submitting Hulk Hogan. This was like a big moment at the time because yeah, this will eventually like lead to like a month later where Lex Luger actually did like win the title from Hulk Hogan, and on Nitro. Even if that didn't last very long, Hulk Hogan won it back just like 5 nights later. But yeah, it was still a big moment and it would lead to like Lex Luger submitting Hulk Hogan for the title. Yeah. So I guess like it had like a big moment right there. Yeah. All right. So overall, with the show, I guess I would probably give it around like a I guess I'll give it like a 7.5 out of 10. Yeah, like I said, there was really nothing bad on the show. I mean, yeah, everything was at least decent to okay. And yeah, it had like two really good to great matches with like the Cruiserweight title match and Benoit versus his uh sorry, I'm getting a little bit dry yeah, I'm getting a little tongue tied. Yeah, Benoit versus Kevin Sullivan. Yeah, so those were two really good to great matches, and the tag matches were all at least decent, and yeah, the Steiner match was like really good, and yeah, Ric Flair versus Roddy Piper was surprisingly good. Just even though I didn't like the finish, yeah. So everything on the show was at least decent, and even some of it turned out being like really good to great. So overall, there's really not really anything to really complain about for the show aside from the finish to the Ric Flair Roddy Piper match. So yeah, so if you haven't seen the show before, I definitely do recommend checking it out. It is definitely a really good show and just an example of just like how WCW was still like really dominating at this time. All right, yeah. So I guess that's all I can really say about it. So yeah, so this is my review of Bash at the Beach 1997. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review, and and I am really going to try to make videos more often now. Yeah, I'll try to like find some time to make them. Now, I mean, I'm not really going to be working like as like much next week, so hopefully like within that time I will be able to like get more content out for you guys. All right. So yeah, but I hope you guys did enjoy this review. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.